Hey folks, you're
Absolute Packer podcast initiating in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Episode 7. Okay, I'm here. Yay! Hooray, technology. Welcome, Absolute Packer podcast fans, to episode 7 of the Absolute Packer podcast with Andy and Elliot.
And it's recording this time.
Yay! Hooray, technology.
This is take 3. Take 3.
Yeah, what's funny is we both work on Macs, but apparently it doesn't like mine for whatever reason. So, or it doesn't like my browser or whatever the heck.
And, well, I mean, nerd note, but the macOS High Sierra, I was under the impression that it was going to allow Safari to do things like this. Mm-hmm. And so far, no apps that do any of this voice over IP stuff have announced Safari compatibility. So, nerd note, but it kind of sucks.
I haven't used Safari in 5 years.
I use Safari all the time, but
yeah, I heard it's really fast. But like you said, it's all these like little mini compatibility things that create death by a thousand cuts when you're trying to get things done.
Great way of putting it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Cool. All right, let's get started.
Get right into it.
All right, X's and O's. Packers versus Bengals to start. The game started out just like we wanted, didn't it?
No.
And that was our defense giving up an easy touchdown to a team that hadn't scored an offensive touchdown in the previous 2 games. Blech, blech, blech.
Yeah, they really made the Packers look terrible.
Yeah, and I think the only key defender who was missing, I say key, was Mike Daniels, who is he's a huge, I mean, behind Aaron Rodgers, I think he's the most important player on the team.
Apparently that's true.
Name escapes me, a little redheaded guy. Andy Dalton.
Yeah, right.
Shredded us in like 4 minutes, touchdown to A.J. Green, who is a top 5 wide receiver, but he made it look way too easy, and that's just something that a Dom Capers-led defense does all too often. Did I say that? Are we recording? Oh, yeah, we are.
We are recording this time.
So I'm on record of saying that I'm not a Dom fan, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that stunk, and I started yelling expletives and all that good kind of stuff. I was by myself, no children. But the one positive within that, even though it was a little rough on the first series, was Kevin King, who is their highest draft pick they had in the past draft. I think he was number 29 or not number 29, traded out of the first round to get him. He looked pretty good. He had his lumps against A.J. Green, again, who is a top 5 wide receiver in the league. He's great. But the week before against the Falcons, even though that was an ugly game, nobody could cover Julio Jones until they put in Kevin King, who actually gave up 0 passes the entire game, which was great. And again, he took his lumps, throughout the game, but I would say he passed the test. Cornerback in the NFL is the toughest position to learn and play behind quarterback, which is really tough as well on offense. But so many times with a cornerback, you are left on an island with no help, and you are, as a defense, you plan for what the offense kind of shows you, but only the offense knows what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
The defense truly doesn't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of deception. So, in short, for a rookie being thrown into the fire, I think he looks really promising. He's got the measurables of Richard Sherman. He's 6'3". He's tall, lanky, athletic. I think he's got nowhere to go but up. And with the other detritus that we have at cornerback, we really need him. So that was a good thing to see, even though that first drive was kind of a mess.
Yeah.
So we were down early right away. Aaron Rodgers did come back and score a touchdown on their possession, which was nice. But, I made a note here too. Rodgers turned the ball over again, and he's doing it in uncharacteristic fashion, specifically for the way he does it. He threw a pick 6, which... second of his career, that stat is unbelievable that he's only done that. He's essentially been a starter for 10 seasons, and he's only thrown 2 pick 6s. There's games where Favre threw 2 pick 6s in 1 quarter.
Oh, absolutely.
So to only throw 2 in your entire career and to go darn near 10 years between them is absolutely stunning. But when you see Aaron Rodgers do that, and that is throw the ball directly to a defender, you're just so not used to it, so you don't know what to say. And then when the guy takes it for a touchdown, you're going, that's points directly put against us by our offense, not by our defense. So Rodgers he's just, like I said, he's been somewhat careless and with the ball this year, and I don't know if that's just because there's injuries on offense. It's making it tough for him to get what he needs to get going. I'm sure there's something there.
But doesn't he seem when he should be trying to be faster, he seems slower.
That's an interesting way to put it. I think I kind of know what you're getting at. And one thing I'm seeing this offense do in general, they've always been kind of a slow starting offense, with the exception of the year after the Super Bowl where they went 15-1 and he was throwing 8 touchdowns on everybody basically.
Yeah.
Every other year they've been somewhat slow to start, and that is kind of a trend league wide to a point, because defenses are usually ahead of offenses early. But for someone who's been in this offense that long, a head coach and quarterback, it's still strange that they struggled to get out of the gate that way. But Rodgers, I think, going back to a couple seasons when nobody could get open and Rodgers looked terrible. Mm-hmm. That was after Jordy Nelson went down. It seems like the offense at times becomes, let's just have Aaron stand back there, run around for a while, and make a play on his own. Like, there's no structure within the offense that he sits with. And that's where you sit in the pocket for, a good 3 seconds, and then you unload that ball. He holds that ball, and, I know guys aren't getting open, but the structure of the offense at times just seems disjointed.
Yeah.
The running game's not there.
Right.
I mean, I didn't actually put it as a bullet here, but Ty Montgomery, I'll go ahead and say it. Ty Montgomery is not the answer at running back. I'm sorry, he's not.
Well, and
that's not really his fault of his own. He was drafted as wide receiver. They changed positions.
Right.
He gets hurt every single game.
Yeah.
And his average yards per carry thus far is really bad. It's like 3 yards per carry. Now, there's injuries on the offensive line. He hasn't been running behind a great offensive line all the time, but he's not the answer at running back. So that's not helping the offense either, where you take pressure off Rodgers. But they do collectively look disjointed. And to your point, Rodgers, when you say plays slow, what I kind of take that as is he's not stepping back, taking that ball, and then firing that ball right away.
Right.
He's just, and that's just, I don't know.
Yeah, when I say slow, that's what I mean. And you're also referring to what I consider the first 20 plays being scripted nonsense. I think those are almost always terrible calls where we always seem to be playing from behind. To me, that's not working. I would rather we do what we do in the second half.
I know. You hear that a lot. It's like, whatever the hell you're doing the first half, throw it out and start doing that do whatever you're going to plan on doing the second half to start the game.
and I know that's easier said than done, and I know that there are unintended consequences with that shift, but this whole, using the run to set up the pass, I think the Packers need to do that the other way around. I think if we're able to successful run the ball, it's because of the threat of the pass.
I agree with you.
So we should just be flipping that around. I mean, they're so formulaic. Pass, run. Or run, pass should turn into pass, run. It's so predictable. I feel like if me as a casual football fan, compared to people that I know with a lot more expertise, if I'm able to predict what they're going to do, that is not good. I
agree.
It's so frustrating to watch.
I think, and I've said it before, that their offensive system is very rudimentary. They don't do a lot of deception. They don't put a lot of guys in motion. They don't bunch receivers at the line. They don't run a lot of crossing routes that crisscross each other that cause deception. They kind of just line people up and go.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you have to have guys that can beat the guy they're across from. When you don't, you get what you get here, which is, you have to have better players to be able to do that. And Rodgers is good. He's only so good. But on that note, it's a good segue. It would really be nice if we had a tight end that could go down the middle of the field and catch a pass.
Yeah, right.
Martellus Bennett, has been he's a liability from what I've seen right now. He's good in blocking. He's one of the better blocking tight ends in the league. I'll say that. But they need him to stretch the field, and he looks slow, and it's just not going on there. And they desperately need somebody in the middle of the field to catch some passes, and they're not getting it from anybody. So it's kind of put all these things in a blender, and that's what you're kind of getting with a disjointed offense, right now. And injuries, without question, they got a shit ton of injuries.
Yeah, that is true, but
because it is hard to. I mean, when they're down to their 6th and 7th string tackles, which is at this point in the year is stunning for any team, even the Packers who seem injured all the time. When you're trying to run an offense behind guys at tackles, which are the most important position on the offensive line, who really, they were delivering pizzas the week before. Right. I'm being facetious, but it's tough to run your standard offense because you're constantly, under pressure. I mean, you could see that's a jailbreak every time Rodgers gets back there. But again, I mean, if you don't have the horses to do it because of injury, I don't look at it as an excuse. It's just a reality.
Yes.
So.
It's very disappointing. I really feel like the tight end situation, I mean, so blocking, of course, is crucial, but I feel like, yeah, there's some blocking going on, but we're not getting average runs from our running backs, and we're not getting quite the level of explosive plays, especially in the first half. And I don't know. I've been underwhelmed, really disappointed, because I really expected really big things from him, and I really think that the Packers work best when there are some good tight ends that just give this broad array of options.
Yes,
where they're just unstoppable.
Without question.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I mean, Kendricks he's been better than Bennett, but he hasn't been much. I don't know if they brought him in as a receiving threat, but I don't want to get too far off that. But I think everything we said there is, it's definitely true. So the first half of this Bengals game was like, they were down 21-7 at halftime. They were getting booed, and rightfully so, because they looked like detritus, which is a word I love, but it applies. So in the second half, things changed collectively. I mean, the defense got their act together and started shutting down the Bengals, and then Rodgers, took the team back. It was at home, but he was banged up. Managed to get him to overtime, and first play of overtime, something finally turned his way and finds Geronimo Allison for like a 70-yard gainer, down to the 3, and then we win. And I made a note here that I still cannot believe this, even darn near 2 weeks later, that Rodgers had an 0-7 record in overtime in his career. Not a single victory in overtime. And then you look back at each instance where it happened, and I want to say it was either at least 4 of the times, I think, of those losses, he hasn't even gotten the ball, meaning the defense gave up a touchdown immediately.
Yeah,
and we never even got a chance. He never even got a chance to go against them.
Well, and the other thing is when did the overtime rule change? That was only like 3 years ago, right?
Where a touchdown from the first possession would end it, you mean?
Yeah.
It had to have been at least 5 years, I want to say.
Oh, is it that long already? See, okay.
Yeah, because that happened in the well, I mean, I don't know if it's 5 years, but I know in the NFC Championship game, that debacle in Seattle where they gave everything away in the final few minutes, that game ended on a touchdown. So that was 2014. So I guess you could say it's 3 years, but I want to say it's been at least 5 years since they've done that. But they're talking about scrapping that and moving to like X amount of time and overtime, which it sucks to have a whole game end that way. But there's other teams that manage to get away with it. But I think it's more just an indictment on how poor our defense has been collectively around Rodgers.
Right.
So. And a lot of those, I want to say 3 of those losses are in playoffs. They're not that 0-7 record includes playoffs and regular season. So anyway, but also he when he beat the Bengals, that was the last team in the league he had yet to beat. He had beaten all of their 30 teams, so he's beaten all 31 teams. And maybe he can pull a trifecta and get out of town, in a huff like Favre, and then come back and beat the Packers and beat all 32. Oh, did I say that? No, I don't know.
Right.
But there's only a handful of quarterbacks that have beaten all the opposing teams. And Favre was one of them. Rodgers is one of them. I want to say Tom Brady did it, and maybe a couple others. But so he basically broke, got 2 monkeys off his back in one win. So that was good to see. And it was I would say they faced adversity with a lot of injuries and a lot of bad. I mean, they were looking bad collectively, and they gutted it out. So I think there's only really good things you can pull out of the game against the Bengals, mostly from the second half. After that, They seemed to get it turned around. So I
did look up the overtime rule. It looks like it was the 2012 season, so longer ago than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds about. I know it was about 5 years or so that sounds about right. But they need to change that too. That's just stupid.
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of that because
it hasn't worked for us, so I want to change.
I mean, you don't want it the way it was, where most of the time it was determined by coin toss and a field goal.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't know. So anyway, anything else to say about Packers Bengals?
Well, yes, and this was it's a random thing, but when you look at Andy Dalton, again, this is some of my little silly humor coming out, but who do you see? Who does he remind you of?
I don't know what you're getting at. I don't know.
It's just random, but I think it's funny. So do you remember the movie A Christmas Story?
Sure.
About Ralphie, the BB gun?
Sure.
Do you remember the guy who beats the crap out of the bully, Scott Farkas? Just like Scott Farkas.
I'll have to look that up. But
I think there's memes out there too.
But he looks like somebody.
Yeah, that's what he looks like.
So maybe that's what it is. Maybe I've seen that and I just didn't recall. But yeah, that's it.
I saw some memes on Twitter on that. And I was like, that's brilliant. Wow. This is what the internet's for. Memes.
It kind of is.
Nice. So that's basically what I have for myself for the Bengals. I don't know if there's anything else really to touch on there, but
no, I didn't have anything else. It was it was thrilling. 2 wins in the week of my birthday is cool. So I was very happy about that. I take full credit.
Nice. You get 2 good birthday presents. That's nice. Packer victories gift wrapped. There you go. Happy belated birthday.
No, it's cool. Thank you.
How old are you? 28?
I know I look old like that, but I actually just turned 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured. Okay, let me write that down. All right. Okay, now on to the one that really matters. And I joke, but the Bears, the Packers and the Bears, the oldest rivalry in the NFL. Coming in, the whole damn series was tied. I think it was 94, 94, and 6. So obviously 6 ties. Here's an interesting tidbit. I don't have it here in the notes, but the Bears were way ahead in the series going into until Favre started in 92.
Yeah.
They were like, the Packers were like down, I want to say 24, 25 games under. So in that time, with just Favre and Rodgers, they came all the way back, and after this, when they took the series lead, incredible.
Yeah.
And in that time, they said something. I think the Bears have started over 30 quarterbacks, and the Packers have started, I think, 5. And the reason it's 5 is because of 1 year Rodgers got hurt.
Right, we had
and Scott Tolzien, Seneca Wallace, and Matt Flynn. But
right.
If you take out that half a season stretch there, it's basically 2 quarterbacks to their 30, which is just, the Bears.
Yeah.
So, coming into this game, the Packers' offensive line, actually, one thing we didn't know about the Bengals, so we knew they were, this is kind of, it segues from the Bengals into the Bears. In that game, the Bengals, their backup tackle, Kyle Murphy, hurt himself. So he got put on injured reserve. So their backup left tackle is now hurt. So coming into the Bear game, they were down to their 3rd string tackle at both positions, I want to say, which was just stunning. The guy that they put in place on left tackle ended up being Lane Taylor, who's their starting left guard. I didn't see that coming. I honestly didn't think they'd do that. I didn't think they'd reshuffle the offensive line. The guy they signed, who was looking to be the starter, I didn't even know the guy's name was. I mean, he was from a practice squad, from Arizona, and I'm going, excuse me. You got the 3rd string tackle that nobody's ever heard of off a practice squad, and you're going against your number 1 rival. I go, this game's going to be ugly. I figured the Packers would win this game, honestly, but I thought it was going to be an absolute disgusting game to watch. One of those typical Thursday night where it's happening too quick. The teams haven't, even gotten over their injuries from the week prior, and it was just going to be nasty. But they moved Lane Taylor over, and that was a great decision. He proved to do really well. I have that here. Patchwork offensive line played great, and I thought they were going to get manhandled because the Bears' front 7 on defense is nothing to sneeze at. They're not all pro, but they're very good. They're up and coming, and they didn't do anything against Rodgers, which was, I did not see that coming. I think there were only 2 sacks in the entire game, and they were both on Rodgers, meaning they were coverage sacks. Nobody got open downfield, so he was sacked after like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Got something caught in my throat there. So I was pleasantly surprised. Now, the Bears as a team, I have this as the last bullet point, but I can go ahead and say it now within the here. The Bears are terrible. They're a bad team.
Unbelievably bad.
And on offense, I mean, look. Their 2 starting wide receivers are injured for the year. They lost them to the year, so it's not like they have much to throw to. I get that. I mean, this would be like, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers, but take him out of the equation. This would be if the Packers' starting wide receivers were Geronimo Allison and Jeff Janis.
Yep.
They don't have much at anything to throw at, so I get that. But Mike Glennon, their quarterback, is horrible. He is just
okay. Maybe it was a function of having Tony Romo explain things, but like when they recapped the interception that the Bears had, and I actually think their quarterback is pretty decent. I actually think he's pretty good. He just doesn't have anyone to throw to at all.
I have to disagree.
And I think they made him look really bad, and he was put under pressure early enough in the game that, it's easy to make mistakes. I don't know.
I think, to your point, I think the truth kind of always somewhere lies in the middle. We're talking about
it's
the Packers.
Probably in between.
The Packers, they have a lot of injuries on offense, so their offense sputters, to get going. But with Glennon, he doesn't have much to throw through, granted. But two of his interceptions were horrible throws from all angles. And by the way, you did mention Tony Romo. What do you think about him? I think he's fantastic.
I think he's awesome.
I think he's awesome.
He's definitely the best commentator on TV. Yeah. Period. I don't think anybody touches him in any regard.
He's fantastic.
He's fun. He's funny. He's super knowledgeable.
Obviously, yeah.
And I can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah, I think he's great.
I get that people in the past have joked about Aikman and Buck, and they say they prefer to turn the radio on. No, I think he's great.
I think he's one of the best broadcasters I've heard in the past decade or so. I think he's fantastic. I really do.
Yeah, no question. So
he's become Mr. Soothsayer. I mean, he'll predict plays and all that. And I mean, some of that is because he's a quarterback, and he was the quarterback last year, so he can look at formations and know. But still,
he circles something on the screen and then it happens. Yeah, just amazing.
Clairvoyant was the hashtag that was going out there on Twitter.
And it's such a bummer that because he's on CBS. I mean, so we don't get him very much. Yep. It was just sort of a fluke.
That's basically the AFC channel typically. So I hear you.
Crazy fluke that we had him 2 weeks in a row, but I don't know that he'll be on much at all for the rest of the season. I don't know how that exactly plays out, but
he won't be on Fox. I hear you, but
no, not at all. Yeah. Those two. Oh God, I don't know which one I hate more. And
I never really pay attention to commentators because it's like, do I like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman? It's like I don't even care. Romo, I end up tuning him. Yeah, but Romo's so good, I noticed him. I'm like, wow,
yes.
So I will say that. I'm glad you mentioned that.
He doesn't just feel like he's filling dead air.
No.
Somebody made that statement. Like the other guys, it just feels like they're saying stuff to say stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's never doing that. He has valued add.
Value added. I agree. And he's got a great persona and everything. Somebody made a comment. They're like, this is a guy who'd be sitting next to you at a bar, and explaining it to you, and you could easily see that too. So I think that's cool. But back to Glennon. You go from Romo to Glennon, but there were a few his interceptions where he overthrew a receiver without pressure around him because we didn't get a lot of pressure on him. Without pressure, he overthrew guys by 5 yards. That's strictly on Glennon, and he also had a turnover where the snap hit him on the kneecap and bounced forward just.
Absolutely,
that was like yakety sacks out there.
Yeah, that was on him.
So he's bad now. Part of the reason that makes him that bad is how much money they paid him. They're paying this guy he's making in base salary. He's making more than Aaron Rodgers this year.
I know.
So he's not very good again, but they're injured on offense too. Don't get me wrong, but so part of this kind of goes take it with a grain of salt because they have no AJ Greens and Andy Dalton's better than Glennon. So where's the real defense here? I think the real defense here is somewhere in between Chicago and Atlanta. I think we're probably when we get Daniels back and some Mike Daniels back, I think we're probably a middle of the road defense. And to me that's enough. If you got Aaron Rodgers and you have a middle of the road defense, that should be enough.
Yeah. Well, we proved that in the past that it is enough. Yeah. And so listening to Romo seems to think the Packers defense is better than average, even without Daniels. And he's talking about getting a few players back, and nobody's going to be able to stop the Packers. So I don't know if he's watching the same things we're watching, but I agree. I agree more with you.
He is from Wisconsin. I think he was a Packer fan growing up, so he might have a polluted mindset, as Mike McCarthy says.
Maybe, but I don't know. I feel like my mindset's a little polluted too, and I'm like, really? I don't know about that, but I hope he's right.
Obviously, yeah. I think. Now again, they've been playing without Mike Daniels since basically the early part of the Atlanta game, so they've gone 2.5 games without him, and they're not getting any pass rush from the middle, and that's where that's coming from. Plus, he's a good run stopper. But Nick Perry played. He's got that freaking club on his hand. It's like the guy seems like he was born with a club on his hand. He's always got a goddamn club on his hand.
Yeah.
But he actually played okay. And it's better to have him out there than Kyler Fackrell.
Not.
He's out there. But as I say that, and I didn't have a note here. I can't believe I missed this. But did you hear about the crazy tales of Demarius Randall throughout this game?
I didn't notice it during the game, but I saw it afterwards. Okay. I saw the coach's comments on it, and what was going on there? This was so strange. I'd never heard or seen anything like this. It really is. So what happened was, at the end of the half, the Packers were up 21-0, I think, and right at the end of the half, they gave a freaking touchdown, wide open.
It was Demarius Randall's guy. He screwed up. It's a missed assignment.
Yeah.
And he gave up the touchdown, and he looks over all around like, where was my help, blah, blah, blah. But Randall's guy had screwed up. So he goes back to the bench, and he's sulking and sitting away from him, not listening to his coaches and all this kind of stuff. And so he got benched, right? And so who went in his place? I think it was, his name escapes me. Hawkins, I think. Josh Hawkins, I believe is his name, came in.
Something like that.
Randall flat out got benched. And then after about 5 minutes, I'm seeing tweets are like, where's Randall? Is he hurt? And I'm like, no, he's not hurt. He's not on the bench. Where is he? And nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew what was going on. And if you're not injured and you're not on the bench, something's goofy. Because the only reason you're not on the bench is you're going in the locker room to get looked at for injuries. And the Packers always let the media know in real time what's happening with injuries on their social media or whatever. So he's not there. And they're like, what the heck? And second half, nowhere to be found, still not there. And I'm like, what the heck? So fast forward, and apparently the next day it is learned, and I couldn't believe this. Basically, he got into a fight with a coach on the sideline, shouting match, and Mike McCarthy said, get us out of here, send him to the locker room. And so he did that, and then I don't know if this is confirmed, but 100%, but all the reports I'm reading was that he left the stadium after he went there. He literally got in his car and drove home. In the middle of a football game.
What?
Supposedly, that's what happened. Now,
I did not hear that.
Yes,
Oh my gosh!
And I'm reading. I'm going, what the hell is this? And I go. He's a dead man walking. No chance. They're going to cut his ass. He's done. And let's just say he's in the third year, right, of his stint with the Packers, and he's not good. He's not good. He's a first round pick that is a bust. Let's call him what he is. Now. With that said, he played safety in college, and they tried to convert him to cornerback, which is harder to play than safety. So did they try and take a square peg and put it in a round hole? And is that on the Packers? Somewhat.
Maybe a little bit.
But Randall's got a horrific attitude. He's just got such as one guy said online, I think he carries himself like he's an all-pro, but he plays like a jag. And that's basically the truth. So McCarthy came out the day after in his press conference and said, it's an internal matter. We're going to deal with it. But then he basically said, and he alluded to a lot of those things happened. But what surprised me more was that they're not going to cut him. He said he's going to be back, and they're going to figure this, that, or the other. And they're talking about changing which coaches are going to be on the sideline. And I'm like, what the? So what it comes down to is this. He's a first-round pick, and they don't cut first-round picks unless you basically have nude Polaroids of somebody in the organization or you punch Aaron Rodgers in the face. So, I mean... let's put it this way. If he was a third-round pick or lower, his ass would be gone. He would be cut. And so I think it also goes to show how desperate they are in their secondary. They may need a guy like that who's not very good to come in. So that was a really strange story, and I really am surprised he's still going to be on the team. Those are the kind of things you hear about that that could kill a locker room, So apparently that's what happened. But So moving on a little bit from that, the Packers, they steamrolled, the Bears. And the Bears, after a while, they looked completely disinterested in this game.
Right.
I have a note here on offense that, so Ty Montgomery hurt himself on the first play of the game. I don't know if you heard about this. First run he took. Apparently they thought he broke ribs, but he didn't. I learned the other day, yesterday, that he has there's some bruising under there, but he didn't break ribs. It was very painful.
Okay.
Obviously,
so he'll be back.
Yeah, he's planning to play against Dallas, but the initial report was he broke ribs, and you're like, well, shit, he's going to be out for weeks. So that's good.
That's good.
It's good, but in a way, it's like, I just don't think Montgomery's the answer, like I said. So
no, but if he splits time with, is it Jones?
Yes, that's what I had in here. Aaron Jones is the third string. Now, before you go there, the second string running back is Jamal Williams, who is a rookie too. He played about 6 snaps, hurt his knee. And you're going... Yeah,
he was doing really well, too.
No, I think you're thinking of Jones. Jamal Williams was looking like he was plowing into the line, and I'm going, oh, my God, who do they have left?
Didn't he have consistency-wise, maybe, but I thought he had a good run.
He only had 6 snaps, and I don't think based on what I saw...
I could be wrong, yeah. Maybe I'm thinking of Jones.
It's easy to be wrong because they got they're just, it's a turnstile of running backs going in there, for Pete's sakes.
There's not that.
No, I'm being facetious. But Aaron Jones, he was a 5th-round pick, I think. He's a rookie. He looked great. I made a note here. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon when he came out of the backfield. He was decisive as all hell. He wasn't dancing around back there. He was plowing through. He scored a touchdown on his 4th carry of the game. So he looks really good. He's intriguing. Let's call it what it is. You know, he looks like a real running back. You know, and if they have anybody who even remotely resembles a real running back, that would be huge for them. Because I love Ty Montgomery. He's very versatile, but he's not an every down back. He can't do it. I like to say Montgomery's a poor man's Darren Sproles, which, you know, he can catch the ball in the backfield, but he's not that fast, and he's just not a running back. He's a converted position player. So I loved what I saw from Jones, and I mean, he might have just been nervous as all hell and just jacked up beyond belief, which is, you know, but he looked good. I was pleasantly surprised.
Whatever,
I'll take it. Right?
I'll send him some espresso if that's what he needs. Yeah,
and he's a short little guy. I want to say he's like 5'8", 5'9", but yeah, those short little guys, you know, they can kind of squeeze through, you know, because when you're that compact, you can kind of get through some of the mess.
And I mean, and of course, like conditioning and skill matters more, but I think the lower center of gravity, all those kinds of things, it helps as running back, absolutely.
No question. So then we get to the fun part, and that's injuries. Basically, death, taxes, and Packers injuries. That's going to be, you know, this is the way things go. So here are the injuries that came out. Ty Montgomery, ribs. Inside linebacker Joe Thomas, ankle. Blake Martinez, possible concussion, although on a nice note, he had a possible concussion, but he came back, so he didn't. Yay! Jamal Williams, running back, talked about him right for Aaron Jones, knee. Devontae Adams, decapitated, I put here. That was just terrible.
We
have to talk about this one in a little more detail. I will honestly say this, I've been watching football seriously for probably about 15 years, let's say. And that was probably the worst hit I've ever seen. Just the way it looked and everything surrounding it. It was in real time. It looked bad. I went, "Oh my god!" But when they slowed it down, and they even in slow motion, when they showed the way you could see his helmet flex.
Yes.
Did you see it like flex like a golf ball when a golf ball gets hit and it compresses?
Yes, it was terrible.
And his mouthpiece went flying out about 10 yards. And the first thing I thought was that. I almost said F word. I'll try that. I said that sumbitch just died on the field. I mean, my god, was that bad? And you saw the players immediately; they were like motioning people to come over.
Yes.
And the reason they did, as it turns out, is he was knocked cold. He hit the ground. And
Jordy looked terrified.
He did, and I mean, he looked down there and he was knocked out cold. And that Trevathan, the guy who hit him, they gave him a 15-yard. What do they call it? Unnecessary roughness. That's a bunch of bullshit. Because that was if ever there's a textbook illegal hit and like a headhunting, you know, targeting as they call it. I was stunned the whole rest of the game that they didn't eject the guy. I was absolutely stunned, and you know, it's possible they might have come out and they say he's going to be suspended X amount of games and fined X amount of dollars. That might have already happened. I haven't seen it on social media, but
I don't think so. I keep hearing things like people saying what you're saying, like this should happen.
And for a league that says, "Oh, player safety," meanwhile they're throwing guys out there on Thursday night games 4 days after they just had another game, and then they something like this where there's no repercussions in game. It's just such a bunch of bull crap, you know, and it
really is.
Trevathan, after the game, they interviewed him, and you know, he sounded a little bit more contrite and a little more, you know, we'll say he had a little more empathy, for lack of a better term, but he still kind of was defiant about it. He didn't do things on purpose, and I'm going, you just have to be aware. You can't spear, and I remember seeing this hit. I'll replay in my mind, and that was so vicious. It's all he ended up getting was a concussion, as it turns out. They thought he might have had a broken neck, you know, other injuries, broken nose, and all these. And it turns out all that happened was, and I'm not trying to downplay this in any way, but he got a concussion, and that was it. And they're saying if he's out of the concussion protocol in time for the next game, he'll be playing, which is fantastic. But
I think that's huge, and that could be. They do need him, and I think that hopefully he can kind of push through the adversity, the scare of it, and maybe he'll come out a better, more serious player after that.
You know, you make a good point in that, because if you get hit that bad, how tentative are you going to be coming back to look for contact? And who knows? Yeah. I mean, those guys, maybe he suffered a bad hit in college and he's already seen it, and I have no idea. But I also look at it like, you know, players that get injured, like Jordy Nelson, you know, when he injured his ACL, it took him a good 4 or 5 games to really get back into not being scared and to trust his knee and his legs, you know. Now with a head injury like that, I mean, when are you going to trust your head? It's something kind of different, but it is. I'll be curious to see how how he does. If you say he comes back in this next week, how aggressive he is. That's a good point, and you just don't know, But God, yeah, I mean, that was like, if you talk about CTE, that is Exhibit A. My God, I just. Whew. So, this game was great that the Packers were so depleted. The fact that they blew them out, I think, was great. Now, again, I made a comment that the Bears stink, and they're not very good. And look, it's patently obvious that the team quit basically after the third quarter because they knew they weren't going to win, and then they start getting cheap like that. So the fourth quarter was just complete garbage time, and maybe even some of the third. But to still beat and dominate a team like that when we were as injured as we were it's great to see, especially on a Thursday night game, where I thought the entire game was going to be trash. So Rodgers had 4 touchdowns and.
Yeah. Whew. No, I mean overall, and I don't know if you saw the press conference afterward. Rodgers, whether he meant it or not, gave all the credit to the defense.
Yep.
And which I think whether that was accurate or not, because I still think that there's room for improvement there.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I think that was it was really good how he reacted to it. I feel like. Especially because the Bears kind of gave up halfway through. I was a little disappointed it wasn't more of a blowout. I mean, it was. It just felt like the Packers kind of phoned it in a little bit too, or maybe they didn't.
You make a
which is even scarier.
If they may have simply because of injuries. How many more injuries can you sustain? But a part of me, and I actually sent this. I was texting with my dad and my brother back and forth during the game, and after the Adams hit, I said they should hang 60 on these assholes just for that hit.
Right.
And
yes, that was part of it too.
But so to your point, but it also could have been maybe they really couldn't have poured it on that much more because they were that injured. I mean, the amount of injuries that this team has right now is, even for the Packers, which I've seen, I always say they're always injured. I've never seen anything like this. Mm-hmm. This is just so that is a great win. I don't care who says what.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and the thing about it is we can empathize with the team, with the coaches, whatever, but the injuries is part of the game.
Yeah, exactly, it is. So the injury rate in the NFL is 100%. It's just right. Every player says that. Actually, Rodgers says it. So.
And yes, and the Bears had injuries too. So that was we're gonna play tougher teams than the Bears,
without question. So and this is the best time. I shouldn't say the best time, but right now to have what they call like a mini bye, because it was a Thursday night game. They didn't play for 10 days, so they get 3 extra days to recover. And God help us, they need it.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think that the offensive tackles are going to come back, Brian Bulaga and Bakhtiari, and I think
you think they'll both be back for Dallas?
I think so. I mean,
that's huge.
I could be wrong, but I think they will.
God, I hope
I think the probability is high, and I also think Mike Daniels will be back for defense. So that'll be great because they need to be loaded for bear against Dallas because that's a big game. Yeah. But I mean, if the tackles aren't there, would I be shocked? No, I'd be surprised, but not shocked.
Right. No, and that's a big one to win because people were, the pundits were. I feel like they were putting too much faith in Dallas.
Yeah.
Coming into the season.
I agree.
So I would like to see them just beat down a peg.
I agree.
They're a good team, but and of course I want to beat them. I want to win. I want to win every game, but I just feel like the Packers should be, to me, as biased as I am, I feel like the Packers are still a better team than Dallas.
I think they are, and again, it comes down to how healthy are they going to be for this game. A lot of teams, it is, it's not who you play, but when you play them, right?
Absolutely.
If we get a couple of key guys back, and most notably the offensive tackles, I think that will be huge.
That's huge. So That's everything.
I think that could be. And if they give Aaron Jones, the running back, more touches, he looks like he needs to be on the field more. So I think that's I tend to agree with you. I think they are better, but it's got to get a couple guys back.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. What else we got?
Well, I have the outside of football stuff, and there's nothing to talk about. We'll just end it right here.
Okay. All right. It was good. Good show. Yeah, okay. So first off, I actually agree with that statement. I'm so annoyed of the people saying I'm not going to watch the NFL. I'm not the people who are like making a bigger deal out of this than the actual game. I don't get it. I think I don't understand any of it anymore. The whole Kaepernick thing, I understood it. I didn't necessarily agree with him, but I understood. This stuff, I don't even know what's going on anymore, and I truly don't get it.
Well,
and maybe I'm just showing my privilege, whatever it is. But anyway,
here's my opinion. Now, I'm typically more left-leaning. I'll just put that out there. But I stand behind the things I believe in. I'm not going to hide from anything. But I'm not way on the reservation out there. But I think where a lot of this, I mean, obviously it was. I think it was at the Bengals game. Because I was. Where was I? When this. Sorry, I'm trying to fish in my head for some dates here. But I was camping with my daughter in Peninsula State Park last weekend, and I didn't have any reception, for like 2 days, which is, oh my God, you miss everything, right? But apparently that was when Trump tweets out something about the NFL players being, they need to do this and they have to do that. And it's basically the president of the United States saying, telling NFL teams that you can fire players for insubordination. That's where it got stoked big time. There's always been a couple guys kneeling here and there, but when Dunsky, interjects himself in there, and part of the reason I bring that up with Trump is, I mean, some of his history, that he tried to buy into the NFL to be an owner in the 80s, early 80s, and they didn't want him. None of the owners want him. I mean, they blackballed him for whatever reason, right? So then he goes into the USFL, and he basically runs the USFL into the ground. They may have done that themselves anyway over time, but you get this. Anyway, I don't want to go too far down that, but that was what really, it was a little bit of undercurrent, but then what really brought it up, and even you see the owners and you see locking arms with the players, it was because you have a sitting president, commenting on, players with an elite and overstepping, in my opinion, overstepping his bounds as to just things he should talk about and things of that nature. Again, we don't have to get way too far into this, but I think that is the reason why it really came up, right? And that's when everybody started, getting involved, and the left and the right started going crazy on Twitter and all that. And where I'm kind of going with this is, the message has been hijacked.
I don't know what the message is anymore.
Well, that's and part of the reason. Look, it was, and here's what I'll throw out there, kind of devil's advocate or just whatever. Was the message hijacked by? Did Trump go out there to try and change the narrative? Did somebody go out there and trying to change the narrative? And part of what you said right there, you go, I don't know what the narrative is. That in and of itself is telling, don't you think? In a way,
yeah. So I mean, you're saying in terms of the racists winning?
No, not even that. Where you say I don't even know what the narrative is.
Yeah.
It's like there's we'll say there's, and again I'm being somewhat general here, but there's kind of two sides to this. You have the side, and I'm not saying this is white people, black people, or anything. It is the people with sensibilities that are, the flag is patriotism, you show respect regardless, kind of side there, and then there's the people on the other, and I'm using air quotes, side that say, you are allowed, that is inherent in American, the Constitution, that you're allowed to protest the flag, and you're allowed to protest in general. There's kind of those two sides, and it's split right down the middle.
Okay, I think you're kind of in the middle of this, like I am. So
I kind of am.
So I mean, if I go to McDonald's and I'm a white person and I'm served by a black person, I don't expect for them to give me some kind of a protest as a customer. I expect them to be respectful, and for their employer to have standards in place that are respectful. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about freedom of speech from a political standpoint, that doesn't mean that when you're on the job you get to do whatever you want. So I don't agree with Trump tweeting, okay? So I think he did overstep his bounds, but I also think the players that are protesting, and I don't feel like locking arms or taking a knee is a protest. And if it is,
that's the thing too. You make a good comment where it's like, maybe Colin Kaepernick was protesting, as they say. So, I mean, for all things we've heard protesting, these other players, they also say too that, and again, I know we're kind of flying around, but using the flag. There's people who just cannot take in any way, shape, or form using the flag as a vehicle to show these, and I'll say either protests or shows of solidarity, and I'm always one of these people, I have some family members that are have been in the military. I haven't, and I am obviously, I'm very grateful for troops and police officers and all the good folks there, but I see the flag is a thing. It's a thing, it is every person, and what's inherent in the Constitution is it's the right to burn that flag. You may not like it, but you can do it. Now, to your point about, and this is where it gets Probably a little more dicey, I suppose, but if you're on the job protesting, and this is more my opinion, but I don't know how you feel about this. But if you look at, like, you talk about being on the job and whatnot, but I look at the NFL and professional sports. It's a different world in terms of being, quote, a job. There's so many different dynamics around that, because you hear people saying, I don't get paid $60 million to be over here and mow lawns, or I don't get paid what, and how much is somebody worth, however much somebody's willing to pay them, right? Number one. So they kind of live in this, and I'm talking about the owners, the players, all this money being thrown around, and let's be honest, it's money. It's a totally different world they live in. But there's like these underpinnings beneath it where, it's like, who runs the show? Do the players run the show? Do the owners run the show? So you're kind of seeing this weird amalgam of, I don't know, I'm really ranting here, I apologize. It's probably not very coherent, but kind of to your point, it's a different world, a different job they're in. Does it make it right? No. Some people would disagree. They shouldn't protest on the job.
And I guess that's the whole thing. Not the whole thing, but I mean, I think that's
it's also demographics too. What percent? And again, let's call it what it is. What percentage of the league is African American? I am not sure, but I know it's got to be at least 2/3.
It's right around there. Yeah, it's 60-70%. Yeah.
And also, I think I'll say this again. It doesn't make it right. And again, I apologize for kind of just I'm kind of thinking out loud. I'm trying to be mindful of everything, but how shall I put it?
Well,
lost my train of thought. But go ahead. Sorry.
So,
let me cool down over here.
No, so like it drives me crazy because I agree with Kaepernick. His original thing was, I don't want to honor a flag that represents, kind of racist ideals, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with that. That just in general, I agree with the targeting of black men by police. I think that's wrong. I think that it does happen, and I think it's something that needs a change. I don't feel like and it started with him. I don't think that he should have taken I don't think he should have gone about it the way he did. And for a few reasons. Okay, we can say that the flag is just a symbol, that the song is just a symbol, but then why do we have it on during the game? Like, why do we even have that song play? Why do we have the flag come out?
That's an interesting question. And a lot of people would say, the conspiracy nuts and others would say, this is paid patriotism.
And well, there's no conspiracy. They do get paid. And
that, to your point, it's like it's not, but it's sorry to interject.
No, so it's part of the showmanship of it. It's part, so like these things are just intertwined. And so then I hear the other side. Okay, I hear people saying, okay, yeah, easy for you to say as a white guy that when is it okay for black people to protest? Well, it's okay, they can protest, but it's also okay for fans of the game and for people who don't feel exactly the way they do to be upset about it.
Oh, sure, I agree. I 100% agree with that. Because
so
that's the beauty of inherent rights and liberties.
Yeah,
is that and this is where it gets dicey when you talk about like hate speech versus free speech, and that's kind of a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah,
in a way, but each side has the right to be mad at the other.
Right.
So in a way, that's good. Now, I'll say this too. Part of the other reason, I believe, and I'm sure others have said this, players, that they do this is, they have a power to reach more people simply because of television and because of the market and all those things. To your point, does that allow if it's employer based, not government based, if let's put it this way, if one of the owners came out and said, I don't want to deal with this, cut them all. We all know that would be very bad for many things. Number one, it'd be bad for business. So a lot of what you're seeing here is it's bad for business, right? The owners are going to do whatever they need to do, including a lot of these. Seeing Jerry Jones lock arms with his players when he donated over $1 million to Donald Trump. I think that's more about business. I think that's more about dog and pony show, in my personal opinion.
But okay, so everybody keeps going back to rights, though. So when people talk about constitutional rights, they're talking about the government will not impose laws controlling what you can say. This isn't about government. No, the government isn't doing anything. This is more akin to, we're recording a podcast and like at whatever points we have, let's say we have somebody doing editing for us. If that person took it upon themselves to just interject some left-leaning or right-leaning advertisement right in the middle, that's more like what this is. And I don't think anybody has a. I guess they have the right. They shouldn't go to prison. But when people talk about like, hey, is it fair that Kaepernick isn't getting hired? I don't know. Maybe it is. You just don't want. And yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to bring race into it at all. In regards to, oh yeah, easy for you to say, and but it isn't easy for me to say. If I'm working for somebody, I don't just get to say whatever I want whenever I want. There are restrictions on what I'm able to do, and these players, they actually have more freedom than the average person in the game itself, but also they make a lot of money. So when people say, oh, well, what is okay for as a protest, I actually believe that these players, and Kaepernick does put his money where his mouth is. So I feel like he's just a separate thing from anybody else in the league, really. But any of these other players, Aaron Rodgers, anybody, if they want to, they make a lot of money. So if they want to buy some advertising on CBS and have an ad play, that is way more appropriate. I feel like that's the way they should be protesting. If CBS wants to give them a discount, that would also be appropriate. I just feel like the program itself that we're tuning into for entertainment, I feel like that just and again, they have the right to do it, but and it doesn't, partly because I don't even know what's being protested anymore. It kind of falls on deaf ears for me. I don't really care what they do now. I feel like there are more effective ways to keep this message alive. And again, I go back to like the rules controlling what police can do from a violence standpoint, from just an infringement of rights standpoint, even across races, but especially black people. I think that needs to be. I think that needs to continue to be in the limelight. But I feel like this is having almost the opposite effect.
Yeah, it's like I said, the narrative I think has kind of been hijacked and it's been polluted and it's just been mishmashed and kind of sent on careening areas all over the place by people like the Trumps and like the fringe elements. It's like, to your point, I keep going back to what you said. You go, what's it about? Yeah, I think that's kind of telling. A couple of things, and I was thinking about this while you were talking there, and I was, I wasn't alive during Vietnam, but a lot of when you think about the war in Vietnam, what percentage of the soldiers were black? It's probably pretty low. There were a lot of white guys, but what I'm kind of getting at there, and people hated that war. That was during there was tons of protests about it, and you had guys fighting for their country, and then they came back and they were spit on, and this was white, black, whatever, and you almost wonder if, I don't really know where this is going, but I'm trying to like put yourself in somebody's shoes, so to speak. It's like you can't put yourself, being a white person. I'm one of these people, and I have a lot of empathy and whatnot. You can't pretend to be, if you're white, you can't pretend to know what it's like to be black. You just, I'm sorry, you just can't. And if you're black, you can't pretend to be white because you just don't know. There's certain, it kind of goes both ways. But going back to the Vietnam comment, you got people come back and they're fighting for a war, and they may not have liked it, but they were doing their duty. They came back and they were called baby killer and spit on and all that, and that was almost like, it's like the closest thing that white people could be to feeling something like that. And I know that's kind of a strange way to look at it, but I saw a couple months ago the movie with Tom Hanks about Vietnam. It was Born on the 4th of July.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you remember, it almost, it has this feeling of like Vietnam-esque thing, but it's not a war. It's like a culture war. And another thing, and I'm a great rambler, and I don't want to go too far on. I have a lot of thoughts on this, and they're maybe some are cohesive, some aren't concise, but I don't know how you feel about this, but when you talk about, I think everybody can agree there's some kind of, there's inherent racism on some levels in this country.
Of course there is.
There is, Now, the thing that about all that, whether it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, that conversation, when we are truly going to tackle that subject, and I mean like as a country, everybody, if you're truly going to tackle this subject, it's going to be uncomfortable. It is meant to be uncomfortable and to be hard. It's not going to be fun on any level. But if it's not, then we're not doing it the right way. You know what I mean? So there's
Absolutely.
this weird thing when I'm watching all this. I'm going, I don't feel comfortable. I mean, I think it needs to be brought out, but I have kind of that feeling where it's like, ugh, where are we headed? And all, you have all these kind of weird feelings, and you go on social media and this, that, the other, and it's just, it's so divisive. But at the same time, there's this little piece in the back of my brain going, this all feels terribly uncomfortable right now at this climate. But I'm like, you know what? It has to be.
Right.
And because if it's not, we're not doing it right. So I don't know what the next few months, games, seasons is going to play out with all this, but and there's history of protests with sports and politics intertwined. I mean, go back to the Olympics,
no
the
question,
fists raised.
Yep.
And then Muhammad Ali, when he was Cassius Clay and not wanting to fight, a war for the slave masters. There's histories of protests and all these things going on. And it kind of does get back to that Vietnam thing where you did have white, soldiers protesting against that and white people protesting against that. So, again, really bouncing around. But there's history all over the place intertwined there. And we've made it out. We've made it through. But right now with technology, maybe that's it, technology. And, if you go on social media or any of the news, it's like Bill Hicks, another one of my favorite comedians, has a great bit on this where he says, and this was in 1991 during the Gulf War, he goes, turn on CNN and it goes, war, death, famine, AIDS, everything's bad, don't do this, don't do that. And he goes, and then I go up to my window and I look outside and he goes, where's all this shit happening? And I'm quoting him. And what he's getting at there is it's kind of the whole if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. Everything seems terrible. Things have always been terrible over time, and maybe it's been the same amount of terrible, but we've never had the technology to leverage it that quick all over the world. Does that make sense?
It actually does.
So I know I'm really going down the rabbit hole on some of this and just bouncing around, but I'll close with this. And again, I'm kind of repeating myself. It's going to be a very uncomfortable conversation for everybody. Black, white, brown, purple, male, female, all these kinds of inherent things. It's meant to be. And it may take a long time, it may take generations, but it needs to happen. And if we're not feeling uncomfortable and we're not feeling vulnerable and all that, we're not doing it right.
No,
Mic drop.
yeah. I mean, it's all true, and but I think that the way and it's not an organized effort. I recognize that too, but I think
it's a very guerrilla, guerrilla marketing, for lack of a better term. There's a lot of marketing, it's like,
but because so much of it has been co-opted and so much of it has been disorganized, hijacked. I think we're not going to be talking about this in another few months.
You could be right. I mean, the narrative and the news cycle can change so fast, but if we can spark a conversation and make people feel uncomfortable and get the other thing that's interesting, I say that's the end, but the whole Trump presidency and all that, if anything, it's brought out from everybody. It's that there is a need that both sides have to talk to each other. I still hear stories of people where they said, my dad voted for Trump or my dad voted for Hillary, and they won't even talk to each other anymore. Families won't even talk to each other because of that. And that kind of crap has to stop. So you have to get people talking to each other, even if they're very different. So that's
totally
important.
true.
That's important.
And so after the game, after the Bengals game, they had a 60 Minutes thing with Oprah on, and everybody should watch that.
Really,
it was about that very thing. Yeah. She got everybody in a room and they were talking about it, and it was really good. She's pretty amazing.
Oprah?
Yeah.
Well, she's good at what she does, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that she has one name.
Harpo.
Right.
I didn't even know this a few years ago that was her name spelled backwards. I'm like, what's up with this Harpo? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's why she's always a billionaire and I'm not.
That's right. She's a step ahead of us.
Oh.
So your last little blip on that was the cover of the Sports Illustrated magazine.
Yeah, and this kind of all goes hand in, and it talks about the narrative getting hijacked. You and I briefly talked about this before we started recording, and if you click on that link, my thoughts on, you get there's been a lot of commentary from pundits out there about said cover, and I think there's some truth in it, and the guy who's featured right in the link here, Bomani Jones, he's big into sports. A lot of people on Twitter know who he is. It's kind of hard to describe exactly who he is, but go on Twitter and find who Bomani Jones is, and he's an activist, but he's also involved with sports a lot, and I think he's on some ESPN shows. But to your point about I know what Kaepernick was doing and things like that. I look at this and I go, sports is united, but Kaepernick's nowhere on here.
Right.
And that's kind of odd. And others have already made that comment. I'm not coming out with some kind of thing that nobody else has noticed, but I am saying that is a big thing. And then they got Roger Goodell on there, who is despised. It's just I want to say it sounds like kind of an obtuse cover that was thrown together quick at Sports Illustrated, but the other, like the area in me that's very cynical says, did they do this to further stoke it and sell more magazines? I mean,
Sure.
who knows?
Right.
But that's my comment on that. And Steph Curry, who's right in the middle there, Golden State, he came out and he said he was not he hated the cover, and he kind of said, in better terms than me probably, similar things, So it was obviously there's heavily photoshopped. I guarantee you, there's not a picture of LeBron locking arms with Steph Curry and Roger Goodell. That picture doesn't exist somewhere except here via Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying anything, crazy there, but that's my general cover about that. But media hijack, is kind of what that screams there. So I don't know if you have certain comments on that particular bullet, but
No, not really. I feel like you can say that maybe Kaepernick didn't need to be on there because he's not a current player, so the current news is not really about him. But then why is Goodell in there? I don't know. I don't get it.
And I mean, let's be honest. There was a specific. There wasn't like they were sitting around and that they printed it and went, "Oh shit, we forgot Colin Kaepernick." There's a reason they left him off. That reason, I don't know the exact reasons, but there's some that we can probably extrapolate.
Right.
So I don't know. The last bullet point, yes. And this is we're going to end on a good subject here, a silly subject. So we're shifting from all these super analytical, thought provoking,
Right.
Political punditry and all these things, and we're going to go to a great Twitter account that I think everybody should follow if you're a Wisconsin sports fan. Any Wisconsin team. We're talking Badgers, Packers,
It's pretty
Brewers,
great.
whatever. It's outstanding. And this is a Twitter account only. I don't think they have a Facebook page. At JS Comments. So this Twitter account has existed for I think a couple years, and all it is, all of it is some person they are anonymous. Not sure who it is. They take silly, outlandish, ridiculous comments from within articles that the Journal Sentinel posts, and they just post the comments in no context. So the tweet is the comment, and there is anything else about it. It is completely without context. They just post said comments. And I encourage everybody out there to go out there and peruse some of these. Some are funny, some are ridiculous, some make you mad. But in the end, I find it pretty humorous because there's some doozies out there politically, but then there's just some absolutely... anyway.
Well, they're quoted verbatim, so spelling errors, grammar errors, and all, just crazy nonsense. So there's this one on the September 29th. Didn't watch, period. Aaron Rodgers, spelled wrong, is a flaming libtard.
Exactly.
So great.
And the avatar is of a guy. I'm pretty sure this is from... I think it's the Mary Tyler Moore Show. That's
Oh, is that who it is? Because I'm like,
it is.
Looks a little bit like...
I
thought it was Mike Pence.
Nice. Maybe better. But it's just this old white guy with his head and his hand, like face palm kind of thing.
I think you're right. I think that's who it is. I don't know how you figured that out. It's hard to tell.
Because I have a mountain of knowledge about old comedy and TV.
Wow.
That means, but yeah, let's just. I'm gonna scroll. This is almost like the Wheel of Doom. I'm just gonna scroll down real quick with my computer. I'm gonna pick a comment. Okay, so this is from September 12th. Again, presented without context. The Hokie play calling to try and draw them offsides, I think, is pretty desperate. Just play the game. Okay, right. That one's pretty tame, if you will.
It's benign, but the guy's totally wrong.
I know.
Like, no, that's one of our chief advantages. Sorry, guys. Sorry, whoever you are.
Here's a great one. Okay. The injuries are down because all they do is play cards. Only chance of injury is falling off a child's bike on the way to the field.
Right.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
I got to do a couple other, sorry, just because they're so good, and then we'll call her a day.
Sounds good.
I'm going to try and find some really good ones.
Maybe that should be a recurring thing. Maybe we just pull one out every week.
I think that's a great idea.
We'll pull out the best one they had for the week. These are really great, though.
Okay. Now this one is kind of political, but it's obtuse, I would say. If a Southern player held up a Confederate flag during playing of the national anthem, how would black players react to that? Oh. Sorry, I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at some other ones here. Oh, one more. I have to do one more. And this one I won't make political at all. I'll make it something about players and injuries and all that. Oh, come on. Oh, this is getting too far into baseball now.
Yeah.
It is very, when there's no Packers, it doesn't do that, but
right.
Oh, there's some doozies in here.
It's good, and I think they're just going to get better as the season goes, so.
Oh, here's one. This one is semi-political, not as bad as the other one, but what discrimination? Where? Call me ignorant, but I don't see it.
Right.
So, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll pound your head against the wall, but in the end, that is, for lack of a better term, it's an entertaining Twitter.
Well, I mean, whatever your politics, I think comedy's comedy. It's still funny.
Yes, exactly. And exactly. So,
and making fun of ignorant people who can't spell, I always like that. I think that's I think that should be part of our culture.
I tend to agree.
So we have a week to go, and then we have Dallas, and I don't know if you got anything else. Go Pack, go! Beat them Cowboys.
Oh, I got one more. JS comments, and then we're gonna cut it right there. All
right.
Okay, put Martellus Bennett at left tackle. He's as good as most offensive linemen at blocking. Bet he'd do better than anyone else. Can't drop any more passes, too.
Ouch.
Genius. Love it.
Ouch.
Okay. Alrighty. With that, we are out, Packer fans. See ya.
Podcast.
Chair.
I know, right?